Hello and welcome to the Fintech Association of Africa Cybersecurity Podcast, your go-to platform for all conversations at the intersection of technology, finance, and digital security across the African continent. I am your host, Dr. Abiola Abimbola, and I am thrilled to have you with us today as we tackle one of the most critical issues in the African fintech ecosystem, cybersecurity. It's a common buzzword that we hear globally, and I'd like to use this platform to basically create awareness about cybersecurity, not only within Nigeria but across Africa as well. In a context where mobile money and digital financial services are transformed economies and lives, the opportunity are massive, but so are the threats. As we build and scale inclusive digital financial platforms, we must also prioritize resilience, trust, and protection of every user. Across Africa, you realize that we now have digital laws coming up. And the purpose of these digital laws are also to protect the user data. Whether you are a fintech founder, a developer, a policy leader, an investor, or just passionate about cybersecurity or even fintech in Africa, you are in the right place. So plug in, stay alert, and let's get into today's topic. Let's deep dive into keeping Africa's fintech ecosystem safe, secure, and sustainable. Fintech Association of Africa Cybersecurity Podcast is here to enrich your understanding of cybersecurity. And to support today's topic, we have Taiwo Onifade. Now, today's topic is on the state of cybersecurity in Africa, the trends and threats and challenges. Taiwo Onifade is a known name in cybersecurity. He has worked with the likes of Titan Trust Bank, Diamond Bank, and he has a series of certifications to his name. His background is not just on security, but also has a technical flair as well, which makes him deeper in terms of understanding the real threats and how they impact the technology that supports our daily operations. Welcome, sir, and I would like you to briefly introduce yourself.
Good morning, and thank you so much, moderator Dr. Abimbola. Yeah, my name is Taiwo Adedoku Onifade. My background pretty much started about 2 decades ago with a telecom company. Then I started off with Diamond Bank, then later to Titan Trust Bank, where currently I'm in charge of a couple of things, primarily the IT security space, ensuring that the security of all our IT assets is done properly, and that's we've been doing for about 5 6 years now. Thankfully, we've been doing great. That's like a succinct introduction of my career growth, or my career path. I don't want to pause too much stories. I want to get into the exciting discussion.
Okay, that's excellent. Thank you very much. So let us know, as Africans, we are really into qualifications, as we are also educating and mentoring people. Tell us about your academic background and professional certifications.
Okay, thank you so very much. So, my background is, at the bachelor's level. I studied electrical engineering. I graduated about a little about 20 years ago. Um, my primary options was in electronics and communication, and after that, after some years in the industry, I tried to, go into managerial skills. Then I went to Obafemi Awolowo University to acquire an MBA. That was about 2010 thereabout. But then the drive and quest in me for education is really not stopping. So I was also in Unilag for a Masters of Science in Electrical Engineering. And then along the line of professional certification, I've done a couple, right? The most recent one is the very prestigious Certified Information Security Professional, that's CSSP. Arguably, I can tell you that's one of the exams that there's no cheat. You
Uh,
have to really sit down
how
and
long was the exam for? How long was that exam for?
so now it's a bit tricky, and then I don't want to look as a superstar because most of the conversation when I read it online, when I read it and study, they said you need about 2 years to kind of prepare.
Yeah,
I'm being honest with you, sincerely, I studied for that exam for 3 months or less. So what I did was I've been procrastinating. I want to write these exams, and at the point I just tell myself, guy, you need to just register for this exam. I registered around December, and I was like, should I take this thing? Should I not? And I sat down around February, and then shortly 2 months, but then I was almost a shutdown, right? I was solid because you really need to know the
yeah,
concept, not on the surface. Yeah, I
okay,
have a couple of other ones. See, that's ethical hacking. I have PCI certification. That's for payment card industries. I have Microsoft certifications. I have, then for my background around infrastructure, I'm very, very proficient with Cisco devices. I have,
excellent. That's good.
all those, most of those CC, whatever,
Yeah,
in security. And then, so pretty much that's just like, it's just a
yeah.
description of a couple of places I've been.
It's quite the cybersecurity field is has grown with time because most of our parents will have said, "Oh, become a lawyer, become a doctor, become an engineer." IT wasn't something that I think parents would encourage their children to to dive into. Like it was, but has that changed?
So I think the awareness is increasingly changing. I can tell you that for a fact, because just like you said, some years back, no one is really going to think about because it does not really exist in our consciousness. They can't see it, they can't experience it, they can't really say this is going to feed you as an individual because you won't blame our parent, right? They're
Yeah,
interested in ensuring that you have something that is sustainable,
it's never
something that
true.
can put food on your table.
Yeah,
But then they can't see, round about them how cybersecurity has transformed almost our lives.
yeah,
The growth of internet, the proliferation of so many services on the internet, and the need to protect those things, right? All those assets.
yeah,
So it was so pretty much just like I said, my background was I wanted to study. I had this serious flair for technology, but then I was thinking, let me just do IT, let me just do electrical engineering and have a base, something that is wide, like, I can actually go into any part. But along the line, I was very clear, man, I really want to do IT. And then, so that's what I started. But when the maturity of, cybersecurity started coming up, it was very easy for me to quickly, kind of graduate into cybersecurity. And I find it very fascinating. The fact that you can, you know,
yeah.
contribute your quota into ensuring that things are safe, people finance are safe, people assets are safe, and then, just having that opportunity to be some steps ahead, those bad
It's
guys
true.
is quite
Yeah,
fulfilling.
you made a very key point just now when you said that people can't see it. It is because in most scenarios, or in some scenarios, cybersecurity professionals are seen as disturbers, as hindrance to operations. But people cannot really see the value you are bringing until they are compromised. It's really a shame. No, it would be nice if we can twist that scenario. Where people see the benefit before they are compromised.
So you're very spot on that particular question, and there are several use cases. So imagine in a multi-million dollars, conglomerate, right? And then you have your cybersecurity budget very insignificant. It's
Yeah,
difficult. That's what most of us in the industry face, right? For
yeah,
you to go ahead and defend those budgets, be like, why do you want to spend this amount of money on what
yeah,
for instance, say you want to do a DDoS protection and be like, you want to onboard your resources on some platform to get a cloud-based kind of DDoS protection, and they'll be
yeah,
like, why do you want to spend this amount of money
yeah,
just to prove? It's difficult for them to see. But my own argument is I start with the major impact of financial loss and reputational damage.
yeah, yeah,
Right. So when the argument comes up and you need to do some kind of justification to say that why do you want to convince me to put this amount of resources, especially in terms of budget, to funding your cybersecurity solutions or getting your environment safer? It's a lot of struggle. But the
Yeah.
fact that you start from from the point of view that, wow, if you don't do this and this happens, you have a breach or a compromise, you will
Yeah.
likely will be subjected to a lot of reputational damage.
Yeah.
For instance, if you're in a financial industry and then your customers have an inclination into your cybersecurity breaches,
Yeah.
first they are afraid to say, oh, am I safe? Is
Yeah.
my money or whatever they are keeping with you, is it safe? Because the fact that you're having a reputational problem, so
Yeah.
that has really helped in shaping the orientation of the C levels. Unfortunately, most C levels, they are concerned about business.
Yeah.
So the only way to get them to say, yeah, we're going to put in this amount of resources is where you're able to now put it into naira and kobo. Because first, reputational damage
Yeah.
might not necessarily be into naira and kobo, but then there could be financial loss as well. If you
True.
bring,
True. Yeah.
so that over time is not getting us to get that
Yeah.
awareness and then
Yeah.
that comfort to say that, oh, so organization lost so amount of resources of money or reputational damage, and this was the way they were impacted. We don't want to get there, so that has been helping us a little bit to get some budget, but it's still a big struggle.
So I love that point. And that brings us right to the topic of today, the state of cybersecurity in Africa, trends, threats, and challenges. You know, with cybersecurity professionals, as you rightly said, it's difficult for us to try to justify our presence because it's only when people are compromised that's when they realize that, oh, we should have done X and Y and Z. It's when their reputational damage is at stake or when they are being fined or when they can't operate as normal. So threats, challenges, and the trends. How
So
would you describe the current state of cybersecurity in Africa?
So that's
Is it-
that's a very fantastic. That's a very fantastic way to put a 50 years experience or what's going on in the entire cybersecurity space within a few seconds.
yes,
So I would like to put it this way: it's a rapidly evolving environment, right? There's constantly an increase in the cybersecurity threat, especially because now almost every stage of our life is on the internet.
that's true. But another some argument, some school of thought will say that why would hackers or malicious users focus on Africa when the foreign currency, the local currency, is not substantial compared to Europe and the West?
So let me answer it this way. The easiest way to answer that is because they almost have that. So for every crime, for every vulnerability to be exploited,
Yeah,
there's a drive, there's an
yes,
incentive.
yeah,
So maybe we'll get to those questions later. But
yeah,
one of the fundamental issues is there are it's easier to do it in Africa and go scot free. You know why?
good,
Because there are no proper, framework. Maybe there are framework in some certain countries, but there are no enforcement. There are no regional cooperation. There are no inter-country or collaborations that involve knowledge sharing, intelligence sharing. So, for instance, it's just like you want to run a red light in the UK or in the
yeah,
US. It's
yeah,
insane. You know why? Because you're going to be caught before you get to where you're going. You have your ticket.
yeah.
Well, you can almost do it scot-free in Nigeria or most African countries. You know why? The technological development and infrastructure development, and seriously, political will is also a major issue that we have here. So
Yeah.
the incentive for someone that want to do a hacking in Nigeria or in an African country, it's higher because your possibility of being caught is lower. The
And your
maturity
possibility of success
is
is
higher.
higher.
It's higher. So your incentive is high because the first thing is the infrastructure challenges there. There are no proper legal framework that
Yeah,
are efficient and effective, and they are applied to every status. For instance, people. I don't want to start jumping the gun, but there are several things that are so appalling to say. You go to places, they take your information. Imagine going to a place and you have to fill register where you put in your name, your address, your phone number, and you're not even telling me or giving me a comfort as to you want to, protect those data that I've sent to you. And it's a common thing that happens, and people don't even take note of it, right? You want to go and see someone in, a big organization,
yeah,
right? And then the first thing you need to do is you need to put your name. That is special to you.
mm,
You need to put your address, where
yeah,
you stay, and your phone number. Come on, that's too much, an information for me to give just because I want to see a fellow, right? So after okay, let's assume that you need those information. How are you storing those information?
yeah,
Are you keeping it? Because
yeah,
the truth is, right? I am tailgating someone, for instance, right? And
yeah,
the person is going to an organization. I just follow the person.
yeah.
The person write the name, address, and phone number. I just need all I need to get that person's contact details is just, oh, I want to see Mr. So 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 so. Do you have an appointment? No, okay, yes, I just so engineering. I will just need to access the same register, and that way I'll see your number, I'll see your address and your name. I don't even need to ask you for such. So
So, so,
the incentive is so high for
well,
an
yeah,
hacker to want to focus on Africa, because the maturity level
yeah.
makes the chance of success of such
Yeah.
hacking very high.
So,
That's just
the state, as you have put it, there is need for improvement. There is opportunity for improvement compared to other continents, which is, I think that's a fair statement, and it's an honest statement that there is lots of opportunity for improvement. And you also spoke about political will. Apart from political will, what other factors do you think influences this state, this state of we need more growth, we need more opportunity for improvement?
so. Now it's a very, for us to be able to approach this, it has to be a comprehensive and deliberate effort, right? So it starts, for in most of all those certifications, they'll tell you, if you want to focus on security, it has to be top down approach.
Yeah,
First thing first, right? You must have complete buying of the people that are meant to make the law. It surprises to see that the people that are meant to be responsible for making those environments viable, making them comfortable and conducive for cybersecurity practices to be done, are not even aware. So if they are not aware, you can be sure their priority is not going to be, they're not going to be on the priority list,
yeah. But
right? So to
I,
answer the
I do
question,
agree
right?
with you. I do
Right.
agree with you.
Okay.
But let's take Lagos for an example. I think there are some improvements. I think Lagos has a cybersecurity committee which the governor has set up. So there is awareness is creeping in.
It's creeping in.
It's creeping in, yes.
Yeah.
We also have, I mean, there are cybersecurity laws now, not only in Nigeria, in Ghana, and in other African countries as well. That's also creeping in. Whether the citizens or the residents are aware of these laws and the companies are also aware of these laws, that's a different discussion. But I think the laws are beginning to creep in slowly. I mean, we are getting there.
Okay,
Sorry.
so now I want to submit this way, right?
Okay.
I like the fact that you mentioned there are laws, but I can tell you one of the best laws for most everything exists in Nigeria. But how much of them are they enforced? Do
True.
we really enforce it, right? So
True.
if there is cyber security, crime, and all that, Even there are, hate speeches, fake news. There are, some, progress in that direction. But what about the enforcement?
Yeah.
So naturally, there's incentive for almost every human being to break a law or to do
Yeah.
something that is not right. But most of the time, why you have people behave properly is because there's a punitive measure, there's punishment attached to it. So in Africa, one of the major things, that's why I said it has to be a holistic approach, right? There are different, fragmented legal frameworks here and there.
Yeah.
Because if there's going to be an holistic approach, there must be, a collaborative effort among the entire African continent.
Yeah.
For instance, they must have a platform where they share, intelligence.
True.
They must have platform where, so if there's a crime here and you're trying to trace maybe the source of fund or the
Yeah.
movement of the fund, if
Yeah.
the fund get out of Nigeria to say, for instance, another country X, how easy for you to trace that fund? What
I know. Yeah. I know it's
Thank
not
you.
easy, but I know it's possible.
What law exists in that country
Yeah.
that helps you to sincerely and legally fight those stuff? If those legal frameworks are not properly, like European Union have GDPR for their data protection, right?
Correct.
So if you are processing data, if you're doing anything with PIS, any form of data, there's a minimum standard and minimum regulations that you must adhere to.
Yeah.
And if you dare violate any of them,
Yeah.
sir, the punitive measure, the cost to you as an organization is
Yeah.
unimaginable. Nigeria have NDPR. I think it
Yeah.
was, started in 2019, passed in 2033.
Yeah.
Now, if that data protection law in Nigeria is being enforced, what happens when you cross border to a neighboring Niger or Benin Republic?
Yeah. Yeah.
You still have laws in those places that
Yeah.
can support that drive. So if there's no collaboration along the borders, along, the entire continent, whatever individual effort that any country is making will be limited. So now he also talks about, the awareness in those places. Well, you spoke about Lagos. Aside Lagos, even in Nigeria, far north, can you say the same thing? Just like what I said, it's ridiculous the amount of informations that, you know, the people give out, you know,
Yeah.
without thinking. They just give it out those information unaware, ignorantly, and innocently. And that amount of information is so massive. There's so much that could be done with it. There's so much things that can be done with such information. So for me, I want to answer it this way. There must first be, a comprehensive approach in terms of the legal framework. The enforcement is extremely important. Then there must be collaboration that transcend just the border of each individual countries.
Yeah.
That way you can have an effective one. And then as much as there are, incentives, we must work on every incentive or whatever makes, it attractive,
Yeah.
for the bad guys to want to focus on a certain, aspect of our industry. So another challenge is infrastructure maturity. You need data. You
Okay.
need data to be properly formatted. You need those data to be accurate. Where do we store those data? How do we store those data? How do
Okay.
we process those data? Do we have resources to store them? Do we have resources to process them? So I also worry or fear about, the infrastructure maturity level in African country as one of the major challenge we have. And then of course, the skill set is another challenge.
Yeah.
Very few of us decide to stay back because maybe love of country and all that. But if you have the skill elsewhere, you obviously can make more money. So the
Yeah.
incentive for, the skill gap set, the few talent were homegrown, they get to a certain point and, they find, application or some sort of what is described as unipartial elsewhere. So the challenge again is speaking to, capacity. I mean, the resources, the necessary skill set that is needed, in the country and the continent as a whole.
Yeah, that's valid point. Now, let me just touch on that skill set. It's very important to get skilled workforce, skilled citizenry. That's quite important. But there's another aspect that is I don't think we Africans focus on, which is ethics. People might be skilled, but that skilled can be used for malicious purposes.
You're completely spot on, right? Just as the simplest one is hacker. It could be an ethical hacker. It could be black, it could be gray, So the focus on ethics comes into the development stage and then framework that guides, our activities. It's and also to also make it very, very unattractive
Yeah,
to crime. That's why most of the time when have discussions, my biggest fear or my biggest concern in this entire cybersecurity or threat or risk landscape is the insider threat,
yeah,
because the guy is just sitting in there and there's so much the person can do. So I
yeah,
want to say that we should include in the curriculum for the skill training the ethics.
yeah,
Do you understand? So
yeah,
we're not just teaching them how to acquire those skills. We are also imbibing in such talent the need for it to be done ethically.
yeah.
So it won't be an afterthought, not when the person has acquired all the skills. Start to tell you, oh, it can only be done this way and this way and that way. And maybe in some very serious countries or some other advanced country, you can talk about clearance level. So before that, you must have done some background checks.
And then yeah,
If the person failed those clearance level, the person would not be exposed to some certain level of skills.
yeah. I do
So the
agree with you.
person, the
Yeah,
person can at best maybe manage SOC,
yeah,
but being able to do pen testing,
yeah,
do ethic hacking, there are certain sort of background check and clearance level that the person must have passed, and the person must have given us that amount of confidence to say that, oh,
yeah.
this person has understand the ethics of the profession, and then the person can be exposed to such level of training and
I do
skill.
agree with you 100%. No, talking about skills further, we need to have the skill set. But okay, what do we do when the skill set, as you rightly said, have better opportunities elsewhere and they're moving to those places? And you can't really blame them
Hmm.
because they too want they have reasons for moving. They have to sustain their own livelihood as well. So how do we, as a continent, because Europe and America, they will gladly grab these skill sets, but they want to use them to enhance their own infrastructure. So how do we reduce that if possible?
Okay, so I'll use a very funny example, and that is football.
Is what?
Football. I mean,
Football.
football. That
Okay.
imagine how many of our footballers apply their trade outside the country.
Yeah.
So the simple answer is we need to develop ourselves locally and get, if not, so it's pretty much also easy because we might not be able to pay them the same remuneration abroad,
Yeah.
but we should be able to, you know, sufficiently reward those skill sets to an extent that they are comfortable. So it's also a balance, right? Maybe you average monthly running cost in the US could be about $2,000. I'm just saying conservatively, maybe about $2,500, right? So for you to run, you might need to be paying, be earning around maybe 6,000 thereabout. But in Nigeria, you can conservatively run your running costs a little far less. So what I'm saying is, first we need to develop ourselves locally, right? So if we develop our industries so that those industry can self fund themselves and then be able to sufficiently stand on themselves and be able to reward skills appropriately. So appropriately is kind of relative, right? Because of living cost and everything abroad, we might not be able to match what they do there, right?
Yeah.
But
True.
what the
True.
person is earning here should sufficiently still gives sufficient headroom for the person even after all the expenses. So, for instance, if I want to say someone that's earning like say 5K in the UK, in the US, and then someone that's earning like 3K in Nigeria might end up having almost the same lifestyle
Okay.
because the basics of your monthly expenses and all
Yeah.
that might creep into your 5K the
Yeah.
same way that your 3K should. So first thing first is you can't say those companies to reward those skill sets if they don't have the financial strength.
Fair. Okay.
So the first thing is we need to develop our industries locally.
Yeah.
If those industries are developed locally to an extent where they can, to a big extent, right, considerably reward those skill sets, we have a chance to
Yeah.
retain them. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult.
So financial reward is one, but also the state of the economy, does that really impact the individual? I've spoken to my female colleagues in industry, and they're saying that look, the quality of education even in Nigeria does not motivate me to stay. So why
So,
should I stay when I can go abroad and educate my daughter or my son better, give them a better quality of life?
so that's a very tricky one to say. I agree with you, and I'm not going to shy with the reality of life, but I can tell you that it starts from, you know,
Yeah.
top.
So
It
yeah.
starts from concerted efforts from the government, because I wasn't born, but I heard that people come all over the world to come and study in Nigeria
In the past, yes.
in the past, right?
Yeah.
So what is stopping us? Because sometimes I don't blame, when people want to, go abroad for such, quest for better knowledge. Because when you sometimes you check the state of our infrastructure, the state of our, educational system, imagine student being out of school for 6 7 months. What kind of lifestyle is that? It's a lot of struggle. But what I know for a fact, going back to our cybersecurity discussion,
Yeah.
is first we need to get to develop those industries, our local industries,
Yeah.
such that those industries are financially strong enough and stable to be able to reward those, skill sets.
Yeah.
That way, we stand a chance to
Yeah.
retain them. That's number
Yeah.
one. And then you can, it's just like Abraham Maslow theory of, needs. There are needs at every level of life. So an average individual that satisfies the basic needs, might be looking at, the need
Yeah.
after that level. So those industries will also tailor their, compensation and rewards
Yeah.
along the entire, gamut of that responsibility and
Yeah.
that, reward matrix. So not just about, salary, and that still speaks to the fact that well, some might want to do that. They want to do internship and do some kind of bonding.
Yeah.
So, meaning that I'm gonna train you,
Yeah.
but you're going to also have to provide a service for me for a certain number of years. That can also,
Help.
help to
Yeah.
retaining those skill
Yeah.
sets. And then along the line, the person realized that really I'm not doing so badly.
Yeah.
And another way that I want to answer the question about having quest to acquire knowledge or skills or education outside the country is simple. You also don't want to play as a local champion. Like the last exam I told you about CSSP. CSSP is
Yeah.
predominantly US based exams. I can practically quote all the US laws around data protection,
Yeah. Yeah.
around medical, around finance, because, so I also encourage
Yeah.
not to limit your capacity or your knowledge to,
Yeah. Yeah.
local
And, th-
framework,
and and that's
framework.
also very good. It's also very good because nowadays West Africa, South Africa, East Africa have a growing or a booming fintech in industry, and these fintechs exchange data with international companies, and that's where all these compliance laws you just mentioned and rules will play a role in you as a local person being able to understand. those international compliance policies and how you make your own local company compliant with them. So, as rightly said, having that broader knowledge will be quite critical. Another point which you also mentioned was the career path. I believe for most African countries, or some of them, the central banks have policies that have positioned cybersecurity a bit higher up. Cybersecurity is no longer customer service. We are now
But
a bit, yeah, higher up. We're not
the
interfacing
serious business, and I
business.
don't want to jump into what you're saying.
Yeah,
One thing that we enjoy a lot in Nigeria is the adoption of
yeah,
cybersecurity by our regulator in the financial industry, which is the CBN.
yeah,
In fact, as a matter of fact, CBN has a cybersecurity framework, right?
yeah.
They also they are very sincerely on the financial side in Nigeria. The CBN is doing a lot.
I
I'm
think,
not. I can give it
yeah,
to them. They're doing a lot. Their
I,
framework that every financial
yeah,
industry must follow. It
yeah,
speaks into in a kind of resources, the level of competence that is required for whoever is going to be your CISO, the amount of even it's so good that if you are struggling with budget, CBN can help you.
good.
Right,
So
right. So
you've mentioned
on the
some points here,
financial, yeah.
some points here, which I'll just jump in. CBN is doing well, but Bank of Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, they're also doing quite well as well. They're also making great strides in their own laws. But you also mentioned the qualification for each role. Can you please touch on that? For
So
example, I'm an aspiring cybersecurity professional. I want to be a CISO one day. What qualification do I have to think of or be budgeting for so that I can get this certification?
so thing is, it's a journey, and that's what I try to tell people, right? It's not a sprint. It's a
Yeah,
journey that takes time. But for me, the best way I would advise is you need to grow into uh, the the responsibility and the roles.
yeah,
And I would like a situation where the individual should try and learn a lot, bit and bit in different spaces. Because by the time you get to that particular role, you're not coordinating or you're not responsible or you're not accountable to um, your organization on just a single sphere. You're responsible for the network security aspect. You're responsible for the web application aspect. You're responsible for almost everything that has to do with securing your information assets. So first thing first is a journey.
yeah,
It's a journey. It's not a sprint. So
yeah,
take time to learn at every stage of that growth and that development. Focused on learning it deeply. The way the framework places it, just put it on a grade level.
okay,
And simply put, for you to get to an AGM grade level, you must have gone to at least between 15 to 20 years, decades.
yeah,
Right. So that is expected you have learned and grow. And then they also, in part of their framework, put some regulatory requirement for you to have some exams, qualifications. You must have CSIM or CISSP, that level too,
yeah,
because it's managerial. But to answer that question, my honest opinion is it's not a sprint.
yeah,
It's gradual, and the person should take time to learn exactly the rudiments and then grow and graduate into it and learn all those things because they can be very useful later.
yeah,
You won't have, one of your reporting lines speak to you about a particular topic and you're completely novice. It's
yeah,
a really risk because you're the last line that everybody look forward to.
yeah.
Right. So that's a way of answer
So
that.
talking about threats again. Now, to curb these threats, we will need resources, we will need skill sets. As a student, what would you recommend? What skill set would you recommend? No, think of Nigeria as a country trying to build resources from the grassroots. What would you recommend? What training? what are the sources of training? What would you recommend so that we build a strong cybersecurity skill set with ethics so that we can actually defend against these threats?
So it's a very broad question to ask me. Now it's like saying I want to go into the field of medicine.
Yeah,
Do I want to be a surgeon? Do I want to be an ONG person? Do I want to be a pediatrician? Do I want to be an oncologist? There are so many fields of cybersecurity.
yeah,
It's an holistic, it's a big umbrella
yeah.
that have different fields and different, subsections. So first thing first is for the person to sit down and check out the gamut of, different subfields,
Domains. Yeah,
domains. Like, do I want to focus on, securing only the network side? Do I want to know more about web applications?
yeah,
Do I want to know about even as far as the intersection of GRC risk and all that? So it's uh it's better to sit down first and say, out of these cybersecurity skill sets, which of these ones do I find most fascinating?
yeah,
Which one do I want to go into? Because the landscape is quite broad,
yeah.
and we will be fooling ourselves if we want to say, uh, in essence,
I want to master everything.
across board.
Yeah,
It's important for you to know, like for CSSP, you have 8 domains. You
yeah,
must know the entire domains because you're
yeah,
expected to be able to speak, to be expected to be able to understand the threat landscape and have a inform some sort of informed decisions and
yeah,
contribution along all the domains.
yeah,
But your specialty can't be among all along the eight.
yeah,
So, speaking to an aspiring student, I want to say to the student to sit down and try and test each of the skill sets and
yeah,
see which one do you find most fascinating or find intriguing. Then you can develop and make that your primary.
yeah,
Why you still take time to learn about, at least to a very good, not be, it should have to be beyond foundation, a good understanding of other domains.
yeah.
Then you can start going from there. And for
Excellent.
me, I will
Yeah,
also say that because of, it's a dynamic environment, we have to be abreast as to what are the kind of threats that
yeah,
are common,
yeah,
as individuals or as organizations. So those threats
yeah,
should also form some kind of input in
yeah,
deciding or determining, what kind of skill set do you think would be very, very appropriate. Because
yeah.
motivating factor is first we want to keep the environment safe, and also I want to say to the person, you also need to look at, okay, which of this is in high demand.
Correct.
All right,
No, that's true. That's
it's
true.
very important.
Yeah. And which of these will be used in the future?
Yeah. So which of them has a future? It's like someone into photography and you still struggle to, do with all those agua film that we used to.
Yeah, yeah.
You're out of business.
A business. True.
You're out of business, true. So
Yeah.
you need to be
You
able
you
to.
made a very good point when you said that they should sit down and look at which of the domains are of interest to them. Because as rightly said again, it's a journey. And it is the interest that will keep you on that journey.
Exactly. That's
Because
where you get your best.
exactly. So to any students listening, and as in Nigerians trying to build a society that has enough resources, I would say, as you said, look for domains that make you happy. A domain that you can read at 2 a.m. at night when everyone is sleeping
And you're
and you have that
enjoying
joy
it.
eh,
And you're
to
enjoying it.
and you are enjoying it. Yes. And you have a smile on your face.
I think I also want to add that there's a very important factor, which is mentorship.
Yeah.
Mentorship, trying to, and thank God for this great platform. They can actually identify people that you're seeing up there, try and establish professional relationship with those persons, and then ask questions. Possible you can even go straight. I'd like to be mentored by you. Do you mind? Would you like to provide me some guidance as to how best to make some life changing decisions? What are your input? What will you think? for me to do in this certain life. So mentorship will also help greatly in ensuring that the person makes some right decisions. In addition to which one of those domains, which one of those soft skills do the person find most intriguing and most interesting to take up as a career in life.
Looking at the fintech industry in Africa, what are the threats that you think are more applicable that the CISO should be aware of within that industry?
Sorry, come again, please. I didn't hear the question.
Looking at the fintech industry in
O-
Africa, what
Okay.
are the threats, the cybersecurity threats that you think are more applicable?
Oh, one of the best thing that happened to Africa as a continent, and I take pride in this as an African person, that the level of development, the level of solutions in the fintech space that's come out of Africa is enviable. Like
Yeah,
is so beautiful.
yeah,
But it's a funny thing that as much as you have such a beautiful, happening to the African continent, is almost in the same proportion introducing beautiful and huge amount of threats, because the threat landscape keep increasing by the day.
yeah,
I tell you this, right? Someone said the easiest thing to keep secret is what you don't say out. But you know about it. The next level is for you to keep it in the room and lock it up.
yeah,
But for you to have a global reach, you need to be on the internet.
yeah,
And as long as you're on the internet, you are global. Everybody have the same unrestricted, I mean in that word, access to your resources as people local to you. Someone can be in Russia, you know, trying to test out your your resources or whatever platform you have. And the challenge is, it's just funny. The advent of artificial intelligence, machine learning has really helped us to be able to do some things better. But the same way that the bad guys can use the same thing. Like if you want to do a target, brute force attack, you just need to pay a few dollars, and they will have botnets that will orchestrate and target, brute force attacks, whatever resources you want to do. So, answer your question for fintech in Africa is around finance. One of the major things that you need to for them to really really protect is first that asset, which is the figure, I mean the financial value,
mm,
because any breach that leads to financial loss is a major reputational damage.
yeah,
So first, they should be very very concerned about financial loss. And most times I found out that financial loss happens along the line of your uh, platforms, like your mobile app, your internet, facing applications, maybe some weakness or some vulnerability in those applications that you publish on the internet. Someone find out that a particular maybe encryption is not up to the notch, or
yeah,
maybe this particular website is subjected to maybe session hijack, or any of those 10 top 10 OAuth attack, and the
yeah,
person capitalize on that. They're able to gain unauthorized access into your supposed database, and they move funds. So first, that I will say is the most critical threat to fintechs is what is capable of financial loss, right?
okay,
Then you can also talk about ransom attacks. Those
yeah,
attacks are where they kind of attack those resources, and then kind of encrypt it, kind of take control of your data, and then asking for a ransom before they release those data to you. Imagine they're able to compromise your entire database, and you can't, it's a lot. So along the line of financial laws, ransom attack, insider threats is a major challenge too.
Yeah,
And I don't want to overlook social engineering too, because it's
true.
very easy, right? And social engineering an individual insider gives, uh, ignorantly vital information that can be used by an attacker to gain unauthorized access and then move financial law. And
Yeah,
it's going to be a very big blow once there's a major, loss, especially along finance, because it's going to affect the reputation of such fintech. So my word to them is to ensure that whatever resources they are putting on the internet,
yeah,
they ensure that is foolproof, and then financial loss is prevented. There are best practices.
yeah,
For instance, I mentioned, having anything on the internet, you obviously need to both have network protection, a network firewall,
yeah,
and then you also need to have a web application protection,
yeah.
a web
So
application firewall.
let me just talking about best practices. Now, do you think the fintech industry in Africa, since it's evolving, do we need special certification standards for that industry, or can we depend on the current best practice that has been there for years, or should
So I
we
will,
change them, tone them to be Africanized? What do
so
you
I
think?
will, I want to answer it this way, and it's um, in, very good question that you asked me. Your level of encryption that you used 10 years ago
Yeah,
that we find very efficient
yeah,
today is no longer efficient.
true, true.
In fact, there are recent development around this the advent of this monster set of computing, these quantum computing devices,
Yeah,
right? Those guys can break most of the encryption that before now is considered foolproof. So that is speaking to the fact that as the digital economy, the fintech development is evolving, we
yeah,
have to constantly evolve, because just like I mentioned, if we have computers with massive processing capability that can
yeah,
break some, ether to save encryption, that means we need to start looking at quantum proof
yeah.
encryption.
Okay.
So,
So let me. So you believe that the fintech industry should deploy current certification standards? Am I correct in saying that?
yes, and it should not be static.
Good,
For
good.
instance,
Yeah,
let me even put, the basics of, say, you want to process card, right? You want to process card, you want to switch cards, do
yeah,
card transactions. One of the basic, um, how do I put it, certification that you must, you know, satisfy is PCI DSS. But it's not a lifetime certification. There's a
yeah.
cycle. They
Cycle.
go
Yeah, yeah,
back to state. You were certified maybe last year or 2 years
yeah,
ago. We need to revalidate that those, infrastructure and everything that you put in place. And they also revise those framework. They
yeah.
introduce new, new
True,
domains,
true.
and
Yeah.
they introduce new yardsticks. Like
Okay.
CSSP I mentioned, they
Yeah,
just revised last year. They introduced more new domains, because you can't say that, for instance, some 5 years ago, cloud wasn't so popular. 10 years ago, we're gradually, going into cloud. But now, every standard, every certification, everything that does not have cloud native security, you know, build from ground up, needs a lot of revision. So
good.
we can't say it cannot be static, and it won't be once in a lifetime. You have to be continuous, and you have to be on a frequent and regular basis that will be agreed.
Excellent. So I have a couple of questions that have come up from the
Okay. Okay.
viewers. Basically, what do you think are the benefits of AI and the risk?
So it's both blessing and curse. AI, is doing wonderful in the space that is helping the way we learn. It's helping the way we can quickly upscale
yeah,
because you know it's helping us getting solutions, answers to questions faster, and
yeah,
it's helping the way we do our work. In fact, with very little knowledge, you can put in questions on AI and then you're able to get the formatted information, sometimes very beneficial, that
yeah.
can help you learn, learn faster
Yeah.
than you would have done 20 years ago. But it's
Okay.
the same way. It's the same way, just like the example that I gave. For instance, some 10 years ago, if you want to do, when we started, some 15 years ago, when we started learning, using brute force attacks or attack password,
Yeah.
you need to sit down there and be passing those different dictionary attacks to those
Yeah.
passwords one that match. Now, if you consider you have botnet that will generate thousands and thousands of password dictionary
Yeah.
before say any
True.
password. So the
True.
same way that is helping us getting our learning platform, it's helping us
Yeah.
learn faster, it's helping acquiring information in a better way. It's
Yeah.
the same way that can be used negatively,
Yeah.
if I'm able to use that word, for the bad guys or the bad
Yeah.
actor, to with little or no information, use AI, and then you're able to do some very
Thank you. Thank you.
massive attack.
Yeah. My final question, which is a very common question that I've been asked personally as well, and most CISOs as well will be trying to figure this question, this answer out is how do you prove, how do you say to your management
Hmm.
that we need resources, we need resources to mitigate these threats? How do you propose that to your management?
Okay. Okay. So now it's a question that I wish you did not ask me, because it's headache I've been facing. But this is the way I try to approach it. First thing is, for my information asset and also part of the CBN framework, you need to carry out a scheduled vulnerability assessment. So you hire top professionals to come and, you know, ethical hacking,
Yeah.
come and attempt to hack your resources.
Yeah.
Most of the time, they are close out meetings. You get your C levels to be there.
Yeah.
So, for instance, the person comes around and is able to see identifiable vulnerabilities and is able to show,
Yeah.
you know, I remember some very long time ago, we're trying to pitch, cybersecurity, information security to an individual. It was an airline. The person was like, "No, I don't need this and all that." And, all that. And okay, what I just did was okay. One of my very good friend, he did. It was the maturity was very low. They were able to play the session back, stop the session of transaction, and then change the response from 0 to 1. And there and there, we're able to buy tickets in his presence. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Showing this person the amount of damage that can be caused, he was able to, buy into the solution we're proposing. So, first thing first, the way I want to answer is I will get the report of my vulnerability assessment, and the closeout meeting, I will get the C levels guys to be there. Hearing it live, the potential damage that can be caused will help in getting those budget. That's number one.
Yeah.
And then the few, thankfully, the CBN regulatory in Nigeria makes some good, how do I put it, regulation around if you're breach,
Yeah.
you are you are mandated to report it. So if financial sector A has lost like 11 billion, and then the report of whatever happens, what needed to be done that wasn't done, you can show same to your. So bank A lost 11 billion because of this. If they have had this solution, they would have been able to prevent it. And it's not like joke, it's straight.
Yeah.
I need 100 million to be able to buy the solutions that can prevent us from losing the 11 billion and also having issues with reputation. So it's a very tough terrain to navigate. But vulnerability assessment reports and then leveraging on what has happened. in recent time in terms of what your contemporaries or people
Yeah.
that you in the same sector has gone through can truly help to get those how do I put it, get those budgets out. But it's a tough one, I must admit.
Thank you very much. I have to call it a day, and that's to wrap up. That's to wrap up this impactful episode of FinTech Association of Africa Cybersecurity Podcast. Thank you very much, and to our guest speaker, so was sharing his expertise, and also to the listeners and all the questions. Some of the questions we are able to provide answers to. Answers could be provided as a follow up. And as I've heard today, cybersecurity is not just technical. There are lots of domains involved, and the threat landscape is varied, really depending on the industry landscape. There are various domains that would help support the landscape in terms of curbing the threats, having a good legal framework, and being able to implement that legal framework, having the right people, resource, and skill set and ethics as well also would be advantageous. And don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, also share our further podcast to your friends. Also follow us on LinkedIn and other social media platforms. Um, until next time, and I would love to say thank you for your time, for your opportunity. I'll give our last word to our expert, our subject expert, Taiwo Onifade. Please, if you have anything to say to our guest.
Thank you for having me. I want to say that cybersecurity is a demand or a mandate for everyone, and it starts from that awareness that as the we're enjoying the new advent of fintechs and digital involvement, you know, those new innovations, it comes with a price by increasing our threat landscape. So we should be aware there are best practices that we should do. Maybe it should be about take out for individual. You need to learn about password policy. Don't use very easy password that can be cracked easily. Don't repeat your password. Don't use, for instance, you have your PIN for your debit card as your birthday or your wife's birthday or your children's birthday, and you have that same ATM kept in the same wallet with your driver's license, and you get those ATM card missing. So it's there's some basic awareness that we need to have. Don't you know click on unsolicited email. That is one of the easiest way where your equipment can be compromised. Might just send you a link to your phone and they have the control of your phone. As much as even all this platform, WhatsApp and all that, if there are things that you can do, like having a two-factor authentication, it will be very impossible for an hijack to hijack your WhatsApp connections once you have it protected by what we call multi-factor authentication as two-factor authentication. So basic things, there are several um, best practices. I wish I can list all of them. If you're doing stuff over the internet, ensure that you encrypt those data. When you get to a public place like an airport and you see a Wi-Fi, don't use your financial application on such public environment. It could be dangerous because it's passing through a router. If those things are not encrypted, they will see all your information in clear text. So let's all be security aware. Let's learn a little bit more about security, and then let's keep the country, the continent, and the entire world safer. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you very much. It has been a pleasure. And until we meet again, hopefully we'll be having this podcast throughout the year. And until we meet again, thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody.